Today we're doing roasted beets, sweet potatoes, and pears. So we're doing things that when combined together and roasted all enhance each other's sweetness. But there are some issues with working with beets that anybody who's ever worked with them is familiar with, and it's the dye that comes off them, which is great if you want to color eggs or something. But if you're just cooking the beets, you don't want to walk around for 3 days with red hands. So a couple of things you can do to help reduce that. One is if you're using a cutting board to cut them like I've done here, I've started with 3 medium beets. You can spray the cutting board with a little non-stick spray, and that'll reduce the amount of effort that you have to apply to try and get it back off, especially since a lot of cutting boards are white. I've cut them into about 1-inch chunks. The directions said cubes, but I've never noticed that something round actually comes out as a cube. But you want to cut them into similar size pieces because you want them to cook at the same pace. So if you're going to cut them smaller than this, then cut them all smaller than this so they cook at the same rate. And that goes with the other vegetables that we're going to add as well. Now, the next thing when you're working with them to keep the problem with the dye down is, of course, you can wear gloves, and that will help too. And then if you do find that your hands are stained or your cutting board is stained, rub it with some kosher salt and then wash them or it with warm soapy water, and that should take care of it as well. So I'm also going to add to this 1 medium onion or about a cup of yellow onion. You can use whatever ever color of onion you happen to have. And it's cut in similar size shapes, although because it layers out, it's going to fall apart. And when it's roasted in the oven, this is actually going to pretty much disappear. I've got a clove of garlic that's going in here. That's minced fairly finely, and then another flavor that we often associate with the sweet potato that we're putting in here and other kinds of fall and winter vegetables is ginger. So I've got about 1 inch off a ginger plant or a root, and we're going to put that in there as well with about 1 tablespoon of either olive oil or canola oil. You could use corn oil, whichever one you happen to have. And then toss those together well. And then we're going to put them onto a cookie sheet or a roasting pan with low sides. You want it to have sides so that nothing rolls off when you're putting it in and out of the oven. And line it with some parchment paper. That will help reduce the problem with the stickiness, because there will be some sugars that come out and can cause them to stick to the pan, but it also makes cleanup a little bit easier later on. And it looks like a great art project when you look at it later. So I've got the oven preheated to 400 degrees. We've got these mixed together, and we're going to put them in the oven for about 15 minutes. Now, I have other ingredients that are going to go in here as well, but the beets are the thing that are going to take the longest to cook, and so we want to give them the most time. So this is going in for 15 minutes. The nice thing about beets is that unlike most other root vegetables, which kind of get mushy and fall apart if they cook too long, beets don't do that. So even if these cook a little bit too much, you're still safe. These look awesome. They're still going to be very underdone at this point because we have other things to add to it. You notice that that cookie sheet is bigger than it needs to be, but that's because we're going to add some other things. I'm going to add about 2 medium to large sweet potatoes, and you can adjust the amounts of this very easily by what you have on hand or by how many people you're going to serve. Also, I've got 2 medium pears that are going to go in here. And the pears are going to break down a lot more than the other ingredients, so they're going to get softer. So you're going to want to stir those with a little bit more delicacy. Also going to stir in about 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, another tablespoon of vegetable oil so we get all of these well coated, and then a little bit, about 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme. Now, thyme is one of those herbs that goes really well with these things. Remember that they're all kind of sweet. And thyme gives you a bit of earthiness that blends well with it. Now, the longer these cook, the sweeter they're going to get. So I'm just going to stir the oil so that everything gets well moistened. Or oiled, I guess. You don't moisten with oil. And then we're going to stir these into the things we already have on the tray. It doesn't have to be perfectly down to one layer, but if you can get it closer to one layer, it's going to like it better. And also try to mix them together, because one of the nice things about beets with all that dye is that they color the other ingredients that they're there with as well. And so everything's going to come out with a sweetness and a little bit of that red tint. It's going to look great. It's going to taste great too. These are going to go in the oven for somewhere between 40 to 50 minutes, and that's going to depend on how large you cut your slices or your pieces, primarily of the sweet potatoes, because we've already cooked the beets somewhat. After about 20 minutes, go in and stir it again, and then put it back in, and it's going to be done when you insert a knife into the vegetables and they come out easily. Now remember, you're going to check them probably starting at the 40-minute mark, maybe even a 35-minute mark, just to make sure that they're not getting too overdone. Just insert a knife into the beets is the one that's going to be the last one to get soft on you. So these are fine. They're ready to go. You can either serve this hot as it comes out of the oven, or you can store it and serve it in the from the refrigerator or at room temperature. It's good either way, as most of these with the roasted root vegetables are. I'm going to have to get closer to my source here, I think. Sprinkle a little bit of parsley over it just to give it a little bit more color if you want to. And that's all there is to it. I hope you'll give this one a try. It's really, really good. Roasted beets, sweet potatoes, and pears.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.